so glad that you are here tonight. We've got an amazing show to talk about something that affects virtually everyone, whether it's a pet we have lost or we know someone who has lost a pet. Tonight, we're talking our furry friends and how do we cope when they are no longer in our lives. I know for a lot of us, our very first loss was probably a pet. Not for everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Miki Speer. I am a musician, author, and talk show host of My Heart Still Remembers is the book, and the show, which is The Healing Half. When I was 13, my mom died of cancer, and I spent the better part of 10 years avoiding feeling, avoiding healing, and just pretending and genuinely thinking I was fine. I wanted to just go back to being a normal 13-year-old, and I thought I could do it. But as all of you know, you can't run through grief. The only way is through it. So you gotta just take take healing seriously, and I learned that the hard way. So what I wanted to do was to create a show where we got to talk all about how to heal and address our own wounds and actually lean in to those hard emotions that are hard to lean into, as well as learn how can we help people who are hurting in ways that we don't understand. I hope most of us don't understand the simultaneous loss of a child, a spouse, pet, siblings. I hope that not everybody has dealt with every single loss. So many times people are saying to themselves, I don't know how to act. I don't know what to say. And that's what the show is about. So if you haven't yet, be sure to like this page. Head over to mickeyspear.com where you can download my free song See Me, which is a grief song that I wrote, as well as your free copy of my workbook, My Heart Still Remembers, which you could also buy on Amazon if you would prefer a hard copy. So, without further ado, we are going to invite my friend from high school, Sydney, onto the show, and she's going to tell us her amazing story. So, Sydney, hello. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's so fun to connect with you after, gosh, 8 years or so. I'm so excited.
Right. We were just talking before the show. It's been like almost a decade since we've seen each other last, except for with social media. It doesn't feel like it's been that long.
Yeah, exactly.
So Sydney is an amazing human being. I could have her on the show to talk about 5,000 different topics. So tonight, the one topic we're really going to drill down on is you had a post several months ago, and I was in the beginning stages of getting the show curated and finding guests for it. And I was scrolling on Instagram and I did like a stop, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is maybe the most mature post I have seen regarding pet loss. So I just wanted to ask you to be on the show to talk about your journey with that, because this is a topic, again, we all deal mostly with pet loss. And yet your post stood out amongst almost everyone else's because I felt like you talked about it in a real, vulnerable way, and in an honoring way that I feel like most people just don't take those extra steps to do. So, to kind of kick us off, do you mind introducing your story a little bit and kind of giving us some background?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, there we are. So I am the oldest. I have two younger brothers, Sam and Cooper. Sam's on the right, Cooper's on the left. And our little dog Daisy, right in the front there in a giant leaf pile. We had our dog Daisy for 10 years. We got her when I was actually a freshman in high school, and my
Okay.
younger brothers were just little babies. Um, and she was a part of the family through and through, and I'm sure so many people can relate to that.
Yeah.
But she was just especially special to us, particularly because my brother Sam has autism. So we are a very close knit family. We're with each
Good.
other a lot. And so Daisy was kind of that glue for us and that little cheerleader on the side that got us through the highs and the lows.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. She's adorable. She's so cute. And I love what you said about dogs being kind of the glue of the family, because I think when we talk about grief, it's so easy to think, oh, I can't talk about pet loss because it's not as severe or whatever else of these other things. But when I kind of did my research for the show, I was like, man, pets hit home in a totally different way. And one of the things that a lot of articles I read leading up to it talked about was pets not only can you communicate differently with them, you have sometimes more of a parental role with them and they teach you patience, but also you get to care give. But then lastly, they are a huge source of common ground for a family. Families laugh about their pets. They do like activities like costume contests surrounding their pets. It's just like they are part of a family, and yet we don't necessarily think of it in necessarily in that way. So, do you mind kind of walking us through kind of the next stage of what happened to Daisy?
Yeah, so one day I was home and she was acting a little strange, and she wasn't that old. She was about 10 years old when this started happening. She just kind of stopped in her tracks and she wouldn't move. And I was like, huh, that's not right. So my mom actually stayed behind at the house with my brother Sam, just because, he is better off at home. So I took Daisy to the vet, and we found out that she was bleeding, um, and it was caused by a few tumors in her stomach. And so that was very scary for me, just because I was alone in the room, when
Mm,
the vet came in and told me, "This is what's going on. Basically, the future is pretty bleak for Daisy." And it was just such a shock. Um, I immediately called my mom. I don't think I could speak words, and
mm,
she came flying down, and basically over the course of 6 months, Daisy's health deteriorated. Um, it was getting worse and worse and worse, and we actually decided to do a surgery to potentially get rid of the cancer entirely. Um, and it actually didn't work, and she ended up passing a couple months later. We were very thankful for the time that we had with her, but I think the hardest part for me during those 6 months was it was kind of dragged out. I think my family and I were holding on to every last bit of Daisy we could,
mm,
but when I'm thinking about it, man, it was really tough because I was trying to live my life. You know, I was kind of new in my career and, just trying to figure out this thing called life. I was out of college at the time, but not really knowing when to go home because that's where Daisy lived with my mom. Um, not really knowing when to go, always thinking like today could be the last day. And
mhm.
am I doing it right? I would feel guilty just staying at home and watching The Office on Netflix because I always thought, well, I should be with Daisy. So that was a really hard time for me for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing and for being vulnerable. To be alone and to have that news delivered, I can't imagine and having to deliver that news. I know the vet's office, they do so much good, but there's so much hardship that happens at the vet. And I'm sure they've seen lots of tears. I can only
Mhm.
imagine. And also, like you said, to watch some like you said, your dog was so close to all of you guys, knowing that balance and the guilt you talk about. It's actually not not foreign of a concept. I think a lot of people, whether it's dogs or humans or anyone else, when you have to sit and watch someone slowly deteriorate, it's really hard to know, can I leave? Am I going to miss something? And just like giving yourself permission. So I'm sorry that you had to go through that for all those months, but like I am glad that you got that time with her. And what do you mind if I ask, was this your first big loss?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was younger, I had a cat named Charlie, and he did pass away when I was 10 or so.
Okay.
It was tough for me, but I wasn't in the room when he was put down. Um, so I honestly, I don't really remember. I
Okay.
remember it being hard. Um, but as far as pets go, that was the only experience I had had. I've had 2 big losses of, really close family members and a really close family friend. My uncle, a couple years ago, passed away
I'm
suddenly,
sorry.
and that was, really tough. It was actually, like, a year before Daisy passed, and man, I all I could say during that time was, "Life is so weird." Like, I it kinda brings you out into that feeling of, like, when you look up into space and you're like, "What is out there? Like, what is this life? Where are we? Is there life out there?" It kinda brings you, like, zoomed out, all of a sudden into that mind space.
Right.
Yeah, and then
Oh,
my good family friend, her name was Linda. She passed away from ALS, 3 years ago or so,
okay.
and that was
So you kind of had a lot back to back, boom, boom, boom. And I know with, like you said, when loss happens, it's so easy to, not easy, that's not the right word, but it's cumulative, right? So your uncle's death, and then Daisy's death, and then Linda, it's just, of course, it's making you think and it's making you kind of question and say, what is going on? Back to back to back. So to kind of continue down Daisy's path, you had to, I assume, put her down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was tough. It's a tough decision, do we do it at home and have a veterinarian come and do it there? Um, you can go into the office, of course, which is what we decided. Um,
Yeah.
we were in the room and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was very traumatic. Um,
Okay.
we you know, they give her medication to kind of fall asleep and just so it's peaceful and nice, and she wasn't taking to the sleep medication. So, she would lift up her head and just look at us and, with those big puppy eyes, and it's oh gosh, I'm gonna start crying. And
That's
it
a,
was
we cry on the show. We cry on this
oh
show.
good,
It's
oh good.
okay.
It's a human reaction. But yeah, I mean, it was really nice because my whole family was there and, just kinda cheerleading behind her like she was for us for so long, so, yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad that you guys were all able to be there together as a
Yeah.
family. As far as part of the what I love about the show is we get to hear your story, what helped you, but also I want to kind of
Yeah.
peel back on what was helpful or hurtful as you're kind of going into this season of making the big decision. Like you said, this is not an overnight, quick, easy decision, even though a lot of people have to make the put down decision. I always like to say, just because you know the train is coming doesn't mean it hurts any less when you get hit by it, right? You can, whether you accidentally walk onto the track and you get hit by the train, or you can watch it come for 2 miles, you still get hit by a train and it still sucks. So, is there anything, whether it be work or friends or family, that helped you and your family kind of during those last final stages or immediately afterwards?
Yeah, with friends and family, like you said in the opening, so many people go through this.
Yeah.
And that kind of did help us actually to think like, okay, we're not alone. Even though we feel so alone and so
Mm,
isolated, um, we're like, okay, a lot of people have pets. Oh, everyone goes through that has a pet. No pet lives forever, but boy, do we wish they did.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think we just a lot of family and friends reached out and told us their story,
Okay.
um, which kind of was just reassuring. Like it felt like we just had this foundation of people who understood where we were at and provided that comfort. And it was comforting, but of course it was still very tough. And afterwards, a lot of people would reach out and just check in and make sure we were okay. And
Yeah.
So and we actually have a cat, that lived and knew Daisy very well, and she stepped up to the plate. She knew that we
Oh.
were grieving. So,
Oh, that is so
yeah.
sweet. And I love that the shared like the shared experience where you're just like you're not alone. Doesn't make it any easier in the sense that it's not like it brings her back or you're like, "Oh, I'm fine now." No, it's still just hard, but it's nice just to have that alone piece taken care of. So glad your family had people. Did you have I guess kind of I'm thinking about dogs, I'm thinking about cats. Did you have anybody not understand? Did you have to kind of explain it to somebody, or were they ever dismissive of your feelings because some people just are not pet lovers?
Not really. A lot of people in my life do have pets. Um, but I do know that my boyfriend, Michael, he grew up with no pets at all. Um, and that doesn't mean that he doesn't care about animals, of course.
Right.
But, it's just like you said, it's just like a certain type of relationship you have that it's hard to put words to. It's just a
Mm,
feeling that you feel when you have it. Um, so yeah, there were times where, I don't think he was intentionally making me feel this way, but I was putting it on myself where like, Sydney, you're being dramatic. It's a pet. You're gonna be fine. You didn't lose, your mother or your father or siblings.
mhm.
So I think it was more myself putting that on me, like, this you're being dramatic, Sydney, calm down. And kind of grappling with those feelings.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you said that. I'm sorry that you dealt with that, of
Yeah.
course. But I think when it comes to grief and animals, like you said, they are. Oh my gosh, I can talk forever about how awesome animals are and how they can speak to your heart in a way no one else really can. Um, but we have a pressure from the world, it kind of seems like, to diminish it and to say, oh, well, it's just a blank or it's just that. And it's like, if there's a couple of words we should just always remove from our vocabulary, whether it's internally, which is most of the problem, or things we say to other people, it's probably the words at least and just, where it's just like, don't say those. Just don't say those two words because it never is good. And not only is it not good, it's not even true. In the sense that a loss is a loss is a loss. And I always like to refer to what I call the grief pit, which is if you just kind of imagine like a field and then it's gloomy and it's dark. And then as you get closer, it's just this awful dark pit. Whether you are 100 feet down this cold, dark, awful, depressing pit, or you're only 10 feet down, it doesn't matter. You're still in the pit. And I think that's the thing that I wish I could scream from the rooftops is being in the pit sucks. Nobody wants to be in the pit. Again, whether it's the most extreme situation or 10 to 15 feet down, it still sucks. And we still all need each other to help pull ourselves out of that pit. Not to say grief is ever gone, because we're going to transition next to honoring and remembering their pet. But I'm so glad that you got to have hopefully that internal dialogue that justified your pain, because losing a pet is absolutely a valid, unbelievably hard experience to have. And I'm so sorry that you lost such a precious family member
Thank
along the way.
you. Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. It's definitely a pit.
Yeah, it just sucks. It's just it doesn't matter. And another expression that I've heard is, pointing out somebody's broken leg doesn't make your broken arm heal any faster. So that comparison game, we just got to get out of it and just accept what we're feeling is valid, and it is hard. So, kind of the last question I have for you as we wrap up our interview time, and then I've got just some closing thoughts about pet loss tonight. What, since Daisy's passing, has helped your family, especially as it's been a little while now?
Yeah, yeah, it happened in January, which is crazy.
Oh,
It's just, it was
we're
hard to
coming up
accept
on a
that.
year. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, like, you move on. Like, life does move on, and you don't wanna accept that, but it does, and, a couple things that we did. I went on Etsy and I found this local person who makes basically, I don't really know what it is, but they like etch their name into a little rock that you can put in the garden.
Mm.
Yeah, that was really nice. And when we're out in the backyard, we see it and smile. I actually had a really good friend of mine gift me a ring that had just Daisy on it with a little paw print, so I can wear it in remembrance. Um, yeah, and I think ultimately my family and I, we try to, we talk about her and
Sure.
we also, look at photos together, and actually, this was a tough decision for us, but we got another dog,
Yeah.
same breed as Daisy, she looks different and acts very different. So in a way, it's kind of like, we didn't replace Daisy because, man, our new puppy, Rosie, is so much different, and so we laugh and we're like, "Oh my gosh, her older sister, Daisy, would never have done that," or, we kind of act like she's her older
Yeah.
sister, and yeah, but,
That's so
life does move
special.
on. Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so sorry for your loss. Like you said, getting another dog is not replacing Daisy, and I think that's a good thing for all of us, especially if it's been a while since you've lost a pet. To remember, like when you're talking with people, to not say, "Oh, that's a nice replacement," or just don't even say that because
Mhm.
I've heard people refer to animals that way, or they're just like, "Oh yeah, like that must be easy to transition." And you're like, mm-mm, no,
No.
no, let's not call it that. That's not what this is.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for being here, Sydney. I so appreciate you sharing your story, for talking to us about Daisy. It's such a relatable one, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I helped some people. I know I'm not an expert
Yeah.
in the topic, but really happy to be here, so thank you.
Your own experience is your expertise. So thank you so much. We're so grateful. And for those of you who maybe are watching the show for the first time, please don't forget to sign up for my email list, because I'm going to put all the notes, that's all her great points that she made, in a follow-up email that will have the replay, some follow-ups as well. So Sydney, thank you for being here. I can't wait to have you on the show another time, because I think you've got a lot of stuff I would love to like interview you about.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Oh my gosh, isn't she awesome, you guys? Holy cow, I am so blessed to have her on our show. So I just kind of wanted to recap a little bit before we wrap it up today. And the first thing that I want to do is acknowledge that this is a very common experience, right? Most people lose pets. However, and this is the biggest takeaway that I hope you can take away, is just because it's common doesn't mean it's easy. And just because it's common doesn't mean people actually process it well. Right? So I think that's the biggest thing, is we kind of slip into the trap of believing, oh, because other people go through this, it must not be a big deal. And the funny thing is, our subconscious, our body, our physical responses, it doesn't care if other people are going through pain. It only is focusing on you. Trauma is trauma is trauma, whether somebody experienced it as well or not. So when it comes to pets, I know so many of us have lost some. So I just wanted to pause in the comment section, whether it's there for you. I'm not sure where it falls on your screen. Do you mind putting a couple names of pets that you have lost in the past? I would love to go through and just read them. And if you recognize a name that you like, or you're like, I had a dog that name, please let me know, because I would absolutely love to see pets that influence you. I know there's a thing, and I don't even want to coin it because I don't want to be necessarily associated with this term, but it's almost like grief privilege. We talk about privilege in society, and because my mom died when I was young, I've kind of rose to this weird top. It's a sick game. No one wants to be on top of this, where people almost feel like they can't talk to me about grief because of my situation. They're like, "Oh, geez, I don't want to talk to you about a dog. Your mom died," and that's why I want to talk about the grief pit more, because it's like, talk to me about your dog, talk to me about your cat, like anyone, or any pet that helped make you who you are, that held a special place in your heart, is absolutely worth talking about. Please talk to me, talk to anybody about your experience, because the more we talk through it, the better healing we're going to have. So don't believe those lies about comparison or anything else, and instead focus on your own healing journey and say, you know what? They can think what they can think. You can't control that. But a pet loss is absolutely a loss, and the more we talk through it and the more people we tell about it and the more we just don't worry about whether what they think about it and just keep talking them and being honest about our pain, not only is that going to help us process our own grief when an animal passes away, but it's also going to give them permission to maybe tap into some of those old memories that they have and maybe accept for the first time ever that a traumatic loss that they had of a pet back in the day really was traumatic. I know so many people were told it's not a big deal that they never processed that. So I've got a little trick to walk through this together. Um, I mentioned it on one of my very first episodes. So if you remember this, just say, I remember that. It's called the T chart. All it is it's a really great way that I personally have quantified my grief, because it's easy to say I feel something, but it's a lot harder to define it. And I have found when we define our grief, any type of grief, whether it's a death loss, a human loss, a pet loss, a chapter change, a friendship that ended, when we grieve, if we don't define it, it's a lot harder to move through it. It's almost like you have to draw the map in clearer rather than just saying go north. So, how the T chart works is on the left side of the T, you're going to write down the losses that you had. And if you wanted to do a pet edition, you could kind of start from the top and say, okay, what was my first pet, if you had any, and just kind of list them. Some of you might have many, others of you might have none or one. And then pick one of them, probably the one that's the freshest, even though it's all cumulative and you can see that list and say, wow, I have experienced some loss. Pick one of them, circle that name, and on the other side of the chart, which would be the right hand side if you're looking at a piece of paper, this is where we get to dive in and we get to ask ourselves, what exactly did I miss? What did they bring to the table? What was so special about our relationship? What moments do you treasure deep in your heart? It's going to be hard to do this. I would recommend you set a timer for an hour and just completely close the world off as you do that. Because as you start to go through the things that only animals can do, I'm thinking things like they're funny. I mean, everyone's funny. Don't get me wrong, but animals have a particular way of, because we can't communicate like normal, but we communicate in a different way. There's just situations that are just hilarious. They provide activities for families. They are glue for families. They are a friend. They sit with you on the couch and just you are their world, and they're totally content with just sitting with you for hours on end and being in your presence. I oftentimes call pets companionship in the stillness. Most people don't have that capacity, and it's not because they're mean or because humans are bad. It's just they're not designed that way. But I can think of my cats and my dogs that I love so dearly, and they could sit with me for hours. Stuff like that would go on that right side of the chart. Things that only that relationship really brought to the table. And as you look at that, it's okay to accept it for what it is and say, wow, this pet meant a lot to me. I'm going to miss all of those things and begin to process. And if you feel led to journal, if you feel led to post a picture or tell somebody about it, that would just be icing on the cake. So if you haven't really processed your pet loss, I'd encourage you to do so. I know I told my story of Maxwell a couple weeks ago, but it's worth repeating because as we laugh about everything, I was not always good at processing grief, and I spent most of my life avoiding grief. And not only did that happen with my mom and my grandpa, but also my dog. Max was the first loss I had after my mom. He was a young dog. He was only 4 or 5, but he had liver failure and a bunch of other unfortunate DNA mishaps. And as the stress of after losing my mom and the chaos that ensues after that chapter, I was so focused on keeping attention away from me that I didn't really want to let anybody in. As we know, that doesn't work for forever, but in that chapter, that's where I was. And I remember the morning we had to put Max down, being so consumed with what people thought of me. I didn't want to be late to school. I was so like, I can't be late. It's eighth grade. This is really important stuff. I hated the idea of walking into class and everybody's eyes on me because I just wanted to be invisible because I didn't want any more attention on me after my mom died. So my dad, I remember it like yesterday. We walked Max up to the same vet we actually take all our current dogs to. Walked up to the door. They grabbed him at the front of the. We didn't even go inside, and it was pretty much a bye. And we walked back to the car. I went to school that day, and it kind of started to hit me around lunch, where I was like, "Oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Why did I let this crap take priority over saying goodbye?" And so I definitely have a lot of regret with that. That said, I know I have a lot of great stories of Max, and it's been great for me to kind of dig back. It's just happened years and years ago, and yet I still get emotional about it because how dogs and all pets can really touch our hearts. They are absolutely part of our story. So don't let comparison bring you down. Don't let the fact that other people deal with it bring you down. Focus on what you can, which is the fact this relationship with a pet is a blessing. It absolutely is going to be grieved in different ways. If it's a family dog like Sydney's dog, Maxwell, a lot of you have had family pets. It's important to remember the spoon theory, where if there's a pot of boiling water, you got a wood spoon and a metal spoon and a plastic spoon. If you go and touch all those different spoons, they're going to react differently to the same pot of boiling water. So, if you find yourself on the boiling side, or more like a metal spoon where you're really feeling it, that's great. Process that. Don't worry about the fact that other people seem to not be as affected by it. You never know what's going on beneath the surface. So, try not to say, oh, it looks like dad's not that upset about it. Therefore, I should be mad at him or my pain's not valid. Neither of those are true, right? Just worry about you and don't try and let somebody else's reaction affect that. And on the other side, maybe this loss isn't that big of a deal for you, but somebody else, this could be catastrophic. I think of my sister Anna, who's watching right now. So, hello, Anna. She is in love with my dad's dog, Dakota, and he has such a special relationship with Anna because they grew up the closest together in sync. And I love Dakota. Don't get me wrong. I will be devastated when he passes away because he's getting older. But I just know Anna's closer with him than I am. So it's important for us to be respectful of that and, not use things like at least or just, and rather just sit with the people and accept that they're going through a hard time. I'd encourage all of you to do the T chart. I'd love for you, if you have any unprocessed grief, to go through my book, My Heart Still Remembers. And I'm going to pull that up on the screen here. So, My Heart Still Remembers, it's my grief book that I wrote, and it's my formula for kind of tapping into those old memories and processing grief. It's going to help you feel more grounded. It's going to help you feel more excited for the future. And it's going to help you, probably most importantly, lean into relationships in a healthier, stronger way because you're going to be less afraid of losing them. I know that part of my issue is I'm afraid to love things sometimes because I don't want it hurt. I don't want to hurt when it goes away, and that's on me. That's what I have to process through. But this book has helped me immensely with that. So this is my personal grief reflection that I put into a book form. So if you are part of my email list, you get it for free. However, I understand that, at least for myself, journaling is the most therapeutic. So an in-person copy is the best. So feel free to get your copy right on Amazon anytime. And if you're in the Eden Prairie area, which is a Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, send me a private message. I've got a great deal because I've got some author copies I can get you at wholesale price in person. So just let me know, you guys. The last thing that I wanted to just really share about pets today is this amazing quote that I found. Sydney almost said it verbatim, which is funny. I almost stopped her and brought it up on the screen, but I wanted to save it for the end so I didn't interrupt her. But it's this beautiful quote that I think we should not only have memorized for ourselves, but part of the show is how can we help others who are grieving? And this is one you should just have in your back pocket and be able to share with people who are grieving. Until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened. And that just, oh my gosh, that hit so hard for me. And I know for so many of you, I see a couple of you on who I know recently lost pets. So I just want you to know I'm thinking of you. I hope that this holiday season goes okay and that you are able to talk about them, honor them, and offer your family opportunities to talk about them. I know it's hard, but we have to be the change we want to see in the world. So sometimes we have to be that person who brings it up. It'd be a lot easier if other people did, but that's how that is. So you guys, I am so grateful for each and every one of you for being around here, whether you're watching it live or as a replay. We are doing this together, you guys. Lean into those hard emotions. Trust me, I tried the opposite, which is I'm fine and just running away. It doesn't work and it's going to come out in bad, seedy ways that you're not going to want it to. So I am so excited to be on this journey with all of you as we encourage each other to lean into those hard feelings and take it upon ourselves to be there for people who are going through things that we're just currently not going through. The last thing that I want to do is just give a very special shout out to my amazing mother-in-law. She is just such an angel. This is my mother-in-law, Tammy, with my brother-in-law who passed away, Brendan. Tammy, it's her birthday today. So in the comment section, do you guys mind just wishing Tammy a big happy birthday? We are just so blessed by her. She does a lot of work in the grief world. So I wanted to kind of also toss up, she's starting to really work with people individually and work with individual families going through grief and walking them through. So if you ever know of anybody who has lost a child or could use some extra care in regards to what's next after the funeral, connect them with Tammy because she's got a billion connections. She's got a heart of gold. And Tammy, we are just so blessed by you. So happy birthday to my amazing mother-in-law who treats me like one of her own kids, probably better because she spoils me rotten and I'm so blessed. So Tammy, I'm crying because I love you. Happiest birthdays to you, to you. Everyone, you mean the world to me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this with your friends, tagging them in the comments, or sending this directly to them. And again, if you haven't yet, be sure to like the page and sign up for my email list on mikispeer.com. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.